It was the very first criminal case of the newly formed state police. The tragic disappearance, kidnapping, and murder of 4 tourists in 1935 ranks among New Mexico's most notorious crimes. Today, the case has been mostly forgotten.
Despite the passage of 90 years, state police case number 1 remains unsolved. News 13 investigative reporter Larry Barker follows the trail of a killer in the case of the Rio Grande murders.
It's our number 1 unsolved mystery in New Mexico, that 4 people could just vanish from the face of the earth, never again be found, without a trace.
It became apparent that something really bad had happened to their family.
Obviously, this is a catastrophe. This is a real tragedy. 4 people are there, and then they're gone. The event really just fueled this idea that New Mexico was the Wild West.
They were tourists on a driving tour of the West. After a stop in Albuquerque, they disappeared and were never seen again. Even though the kidnapping and ruthless murder of 2 middle-aged couples decades ago ranks among New Mexico's most infamous unsolved crimes, hardly anyone today has heard of the case. But go back 90 years to 1935, and you would be hard-pressed to find anyone who didn't know the gut-wrenching details of 4 innocent tourists who ventured into the land of enchantment and disappeared.
There was never been anything like it before. I don't think there's been anything like it since. So it was really a big deal.
Don Bolus is a retired law enforcement officer and historian.
It became a nationwide story. These 4 people had just vanished off the face of the earth, and nobody had the slightest idea where they were or what had become of them.
They were George Notorious, his wife Laura, Albert Heberer, and his wife Tilly. George owned a coal company in East St. Louis. Albert was a barber in DuQuoin, Illinois. Early on a Sunday in May 90 years ago, the 2 couples packed up George's 29 Nash and set out on a leisurely road trip to California. On May 21st, the couples checked into the Vaughn Hotel, signing their names on the hotel register. The next morning, they drove to Albuquerque and mailed postcards at the downtown post office. At 11 a.m., Albert Heberer wrote, "Everybody okay, no trouble of any kind, going to Boulder Dam." The cards were postmarked May 22nd, 1935, 12:30 p.m. The 4 Illinois tourists were never seen or heard from again. The next morning, 6 miles south of Socorro, the tourist car was found wrecked. It was being driven by a slender young man about 21, with long hair, a scar on his cheek, and a tattoo. The vehicle was towed to a Socorro service station where it was repaired. Later that day, the Nash was involved in yet another accident, this time 44 miles south of Socorro. Mrs. Clyde Cole helped the young man free the vehicle from a ditch. Decades later, Mrs. Cole recalled the driver was nervous and appeared scared. That night, he checked into room 7 at the Buckler Hotel in El Paso, signing the hotel register James Sullivan, East St. Louis. The next day, the car thief headed east, leaving a string of forged Glorious traveler's checks along the way. That night, he checked into the Tex Hotel in Big Springs, signing the registration card George Glorious. The following day, he forged more traveler's checks, spending the night at the Worth Hotel in Fort Worth. In the morning, the inexperienced driver had his 3rd accident in so many days. He collided with another vehicle and forged one of the Glorious traveler's checks to pay for the damage. The next day, the stolen Nash was found abandoned on a Dallas street. The young man who called himself James Sullivan disappeared. Alarm bells went off in Illinois. There had been no word from the two couples in more than a week. Thus began the largest manhunt in New Mexico history, personally led by Governor Clyde Tingley.
They searched literally hundreds of miles of roadways and distances on both sides of suspected roadways. They used the National Guard. They used military personnel. They even had a cavalry unit that came in on horseback.
New Mexico was in shock when these tourists disappeared.
Rob Martinez is New Mexico's state historian.
The governor didn't know what to do. He was afraid of the impact it would have on tourism. So the state was reeling and trying to figure out what happened and how this could happen.
Governor Tingley offered a $1,000 reward for information leading to the discovery of the bodies, so he was pretty well convinced that they had been murdered.
The newly formed state police launched a criminal investigation. Officially dubbed State Police Case Number 1, the missing tourists became front-page news. Details of the case were splashed across newspapers and magazines throughout the country. But there were precious few clues. A bullet found in the abandoned Nash, handwriting, smudged fingerprints, and eyewitness accounts of a nervous, long-haired man with a tattoo. A month after the disappearance, a cowboy riding Albuquerque's East Mesa rangeland came upon a grisly discovery. Dumped in an arroyo were the charred remains of personal property belonging to the tourists, including burned clothing and Laura Loris's eyeglasses. The FBI was called in. Search parties scoured remote stretches of the New Mexico outback for clues. Over the course of 3 decades, hundreds of suspects were investigated. Amateur detectives from all over the country weighed in with their own theories. However, the remains have never been located. James Sullivan, alias John Doe, was indicted by a federal grand jury. However, the arrest warrant has yet to be served.
The perpetrators of this crime knew what they were doing. They knew how to dispose of the bodies.
It was just devastating to lose them.
Amy Ashcraft is Laura Loris's great-great-niece.
What do you want people to know about Laura Loris?
That she was murdered at 54 beside her husband and her 2 closest friends, life stolen from her. They were on a vacation and they had no idea that this would happen to them.
The killer's trail has gone stone cold. The last lead in the case dried up decades ago. Today, 90 years later, State Police Case Number 1 remains open and unsolved.
Maybe the 4 of them went to South America and lived happily ever after for the rest of their lives. We don't know, but it'll always be with us. It's always a part of New Mexico history.
I don't know that we'll ever find their bodies. I do know this as a historian. Wherever people have gone, they leave a footprint. They leave a mark. So there's always the hope that there's something out there that'll tell us what happened to them.
I want to find them. We would like to pay our family respects. May you now and forevermore rest in peace.
Larry Barker, KRQE News 13.
Thousands of pages from the missing tourist case file have been digitized. However, state police officials say they cannot locate the boxes of original documents or evidence collected in this 90-year-old case.